Our next session focuses on why kids gardening is needed now more than ever. Engaging kids with gardens and plants creates life-changing experiences. Our speaker, Maree, will challenge us to recognize the critical role gardening plays in connecting young people to nature, their environment, and their community. Welcome, Maree. So glad you could be with us today.
Hi, my name is Maree, and we're really excited to be here. I'd like to introduce Emily Shipman, who will be available at Q&A, and Emily has a video at the bottom of this. So what we'd like to talk to you about today is youth and gardening. We have a quiz, go over all the benefits that I know we're preaching to the choir, and I know you know, and meet some folks who are inspirational. Talk about why isn't every child gardening when we know how good it is for them, and engaging kids. I did a little bit of research on American Bloom programs and have some ideas on how to get out there and engage kids more. And we provided some resources, and Emily Shipman, who is the executive director of Kids Gardening, nonprofit I helped relaunch 5 years ago. It was part of the National Gardening Association. She'll be available for Q&A and also has a video to talk about all the amazing work Kids Gardening is doing as well. And there's a picture of Emily. So the other name for this presentation, besides American Bloom and Kids and Garden, is We Thank You and Need You. American Bloom is exactly the kind of organization that is so powerful, teaching people about gardening in communities all over the country that might not have understand the power of plants. So first, a little quiz about kids in the garden. I know you all can read, but I thought I'll just go through. After science, 86%, or health and nutrition. What are the two most popular academic subjects taught through the garden? Bada boom, here's some of the answers. This is a little less fun in a recording, but here we go. Mathematics and art. Congratulations, woohoo, for those who guessed right. Math in the Garden is one of the most popular books out there for teachers. It's an amazing starting point for getting kids excited about math and all the patterns that you see in nature. It's a book that's been published by Kids Gardening for many years and continues to rate at the top. So what grade do most schools stop teaching plant-based concepts? Here's our choice. Not to do a spoiler alert, but we wish C were true. Yep, third grade. Third grade is usually the time that, okay, we're done in the garden. And what are the two most popular non-academic gardening programs that are created by schools and communities and nonprofits? Team building, community service. School gardens are only beneficial. I threw in a couple of easy ones here for you. Community service and team building. And you'll see this by a lot of the spotlights that we'll be talking about today. Just how true that is, whether you're trying to teach that aspect or not. And what do educators see as the greatest impact gardening has on kids? I know most, first go-to is nutrition, which is very true. Community spirit, we talked about that. Social skills that teach togetherness, it's an equalizer. Environmental stewardship. And here's a chart. Kids Gardening has been measuring this since 2005, and every year, above 90%, always environmental attitudes. Once you start teaching children about the earth and the planet, and when they understand an ecosystem, a small one in front of them, they start to understand the importance of protecting ecosystems in larger areas around the world. It's a lesson that stays with you a long time. So we wanted to share with you a few stories. This is Silas. Silas was a winner of a contest we did called How's gardening changed your life? Silas brought a carrot seed home, and that's how gardening changed.
I'm Silas. I've been gardening for around a year now, and gardening has changed my life in many ways. I've made a lot more healthier choices. I've learned a lot about biology, which is really interesting to me. I've planned a lot out. I've done a lot of research, which is also interesting to me. And it's overall really fun. I share this gardening space with 5 other apartments in this apartment building. And I started around a year ago, and it's just been a really good time. We've had our struggles like with rats and squirrels, but we've overcome them over the years using things like rat deterrent, these nets, this chicken wire, that clutch right there. And yeah, happy Earth Day.
I find Silas pretty amazing and a great example of so many kids. He came home from school, threw the carrot seeds on the ground, and they grew, and then they became carrots. And he happened to love carrots, and he was fascinated by that and wanted to grow a garden. And you saw that was not a very inspiring space that he had to work with. Look at him now. The neighbors joined in, of course, winning this. He got funding to grow more of his garden and became more involved with the community. And this was a kid that used to play a lot of video games, according to his mom, and not go outside. This is one of my favorite people. This is Earl Antwine. You'll find I have a lot of favorite people in gardening. Earl is from New Orleans in the 9th Ward. Probably about 15, 20 years ago, he started a garden outside the church in the 9th Ward. And the garden kept getting vandalized by a group of young boys. So he invited them to help. And they started to show up and they started to help. And then they found they liked it. And they asked if they could bring the food home. The 9th Ward is one of the most poverty-stricken and in New Orleans. And probably throughout the state. So anyway, Earl and his boys started a farm. Then they started raising chickens. And then the kids got so much enjoyment from giving away food to neighbors. They started to meet some of their neighbors in a way that they hadn't before. And then Earl saw that the boys had no place to be or to study, and he built a shelter. So the garden could be bigger, but they also had a place to study outdoors. And 2 of the kids in this program became the first African-American valedictorian and salutatorian in Louisiana history. And that's just, to me, again, shows the power of a garden to bring people together, to bring out the best in people. I'm just really proud of Earl. He runs, it's called God's Vineyard, and he has a 7-pepper hot sauce that is not for the faint of heart. And this is a wonderful story, and talking about, again, showing these just to show the inspiration and the importance of gardening with kids and the role that plays in changing their lives. This is a school I was lucky enough to visit twice.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I sing to myself, what a wonderful world.
It's important for kids, especially in an urban environment, whether they have disabilities or not, to see how things grow. One of my kids just loved playing in the soil one day with his hands. This is stuff that they don't get to take advantage of because so many of them live in apartments.
I love to plant because it makes me feel alive and learn to like put in soil and put water, and it was good because I like to have it grow and the flower will be look so gorgeous.
Students are eager to get outside into the garden. Some kids might be just walking through and touching it. Other kids might take it back to their classroom for scientific inquiries.
They want to do so much. Gardening gives them an opportunity to grow their own food, become a part of a sustainable environment, be responsible for their environment.
I feel really happy when I go in a garden. I planted flowers this year, green and yellow.
It's easy to have a dream. Making the dream.
I invite you to go watch more of these videos. These were made available by Claron, the hair people. Not that you know about my hair, but they made this possible through Kids Gardening and the Claron Botanical Grant. It's called Budding Botanist, and it's fantastic. And I see American Bloom having the opportunity to engage with these schools and provide expertise and help and highlight students from all areas and all levels. And I just want to emphasize, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but getting kids engaged in the garden is more important now than ever. About to share with you some statistics that point more to health and the way kids are spending their time. But I think what we don't always emphasize, and Emily will talk a little bit about this in her video, is the happiness and how kids feel good getting engaged in a garden, and the kindness and the empathy that being in the garden instills, because that too is needed now more than ever. Kids spend, if you have grandchildren or your own kids, spending about 6 hours on average with media. Excuse me, let me get my face out of the way here. Children ages 10 to 16 are only spend about 12 minutes a day in vigorous outdoor activity. And this was pre-COVID. This is from 2012. They do have new stats that this number has not changed at all. Nearly 18% of all children are obese. And we define by obese not just being overweight. It's not about being overweight, it's about being out of shape. And this number has tripled. A third of all children born after 2000 are predicted to suffer from diabetes at some point in their life. And that is definitely a health, lifestyle, being engaged in activity indicator. And climate change. When you read about kids right now, a lot of thanks to Greta Thunberg, a lot of thanks to kids just being curious and interested in the planet they live in. Climate change will displace 250 million people by 2050, threatening our lives and agricultural production. What's important about what we all do as gardeners is we're part of the solution. And how we can engage more kids with that solution. I think a recent study showed it was over 80% of kids feel that climate change is real, and also feel that they need to be part of the solution. And we can show them that through gardening. So with all these amazing benefits, why aren't all kids enjoying the benefits of garden? You probably have read a lot of the headlines with COVID and gardening's on the rise, and there was just a deceiving headline in the Wall Street Journal that said gardeners are getting frustrated. And when you actually read the article, people really enjoyed the garden. They were frustrated with their first year, frustrated with the amount of crops. I think we put unreal expectations on people when they start to garden. And we also do it with kids and teachers. As we know, teachers are busy. They're busier now than ever trying to find. I salute every teacher and school administration finding solutions to still educate kids with COVID time and money and resources. You heard P53K, that school in Brooklyn, that their dream was made true through that grant. And these kind of grants and help and organizing are so key to getting more kids engaged in the garden. Emily is also going to talk about something we created, which is going to be a nationwide network, helping to get more kids in the garden. And so this is not only important to get kids engaged in the garden for all the reasons that we know, all the reasons we just talked about, but children in poverty, that number is only growing. And gardening is such an equalizer for kids. When you plant a seed in the ground and you're all waiting for it to come up and you're talking about it, it doesn't matter what you have on. It doesn't matter where you traveled earlier that year. It doesn't matter how big your house is. It's an equalizer, and especially for kids. It gets them working as a team. The nearly 1 in 6 kids lived in poverty in 2018, and that number with COVID is only growing. The child poverty rate is 1.5 times higher than that for adults, which obviously makes sense because one adult might have, 3 children who is suffering. And what is poor? Because a lot of people ask that. It's $25,000 for a family of 4, and that's the federal level. So it doesn't matter where you live, that's poor. So I compare as we're growing kids, like look at the seedlings on the right, they're all given a chance, and the seedlings on the left are not. And that's why it's so important that we care for all kids to build empathy and that we're able to reach all kids with that life-changing experience of gardening. And that's where you guys can come into, and you already do, by creating amazing garden spaces all over the country. But just want to talk about a few ideas about how American Bloom can reach even more kids and engage more kids. Thinking, here's some easy at-home activities. During COVID, the increase in parents to find gardening activities was seen at Kids Gardening. And you can see here's 3 just ideas, and there's so many on the website. Kitchen scrap composting, that's Abby on the right. And kitchen scrap composting can be done if you provided people with kits, or the plant people provided them with kits, or the carnation, having them all change different colors, seed starting kits. It's amazing, and I think that's what families and parents and schools right now need. They need, oh my gosh, here's the way my 30 kids can garden. Here's these kits. Here's the way 200 kids can garden. I'm thinking what a great community project to get these kits together to get more kids in the communities where you're really present. Hope Grows. I love, well, as I keep saying, I love all these programs. But this was actually the goal of these 2 teachers, was to create kindness. So they created a program between the 5th and 1st graders, and then they were studying the poem called The Butterfly. And The Butterfly is a poem that represents using butterflies as a metaphor for all the children killed in the Holocaust. So it was to teach, what can we learn from the Holocaust? That's what these teachers wanted to do. What can we learn about being kind to each other no matter our differences? So they created a 5th and 1st grade kindness buddies program They studied butterflies. They grew plants for butterflies. They put in a butterfly garden, and they found and met a Holocaust survivor at a local nursing home who talked to the kids. She was in the Warsaw Ghetto and talked to the kids about that. And this is the perfect example of so many lessons taught through the garden. And I just read a news survey. I couldn't believe this. We're 76% of kids did not know, this is young adults, I shouldn't say kids, young adults did not know that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. So with the tone out there today about our differences, gardening is a great way to talk about how we're much more alike. And I see American Bloom playing such a great role in that. If you don't know Katie of Katie's Crops, here's another kid who was changed by a single plant. With Silas, it was a carrot. Katie, it was a cabbage. She grew a 40-pound cabbage, didn't know what to do with it, brought it to her local food shelf. I've had the privilege of meeting Katie 3 or 4 times throughout her life. This is her 12. She's now a recent graduate of college. She kind of looks just as cute as ever, but she brought it to a food shelf, and she was able to feed 275 people with a soup that the food shelf people, workers, let her help create, and it changed her life. On the right here is Mckenna, also had the privilege of meeting. Ian, in Austin, Texas, learned about kids at his school that didn't have any food. So he learned about Katie, became part of Katie's Crops, and grows food to give away. And this is another organization that Kids Gardening also works with. But another organization, if they're active in the community where you are, great way to tie in gardening with a need and gardening with teaching kids. American Community Gardening Association. It's an organization I've been involved with for many, many years. And some of the people I've told you about are part of it. This is Eden Place. It's in Chicago. It's run by a guy, Michael Howard, who started it really out of nothing. But American Community Gardening Association is also a great resource because a garden like Michael's turned into a nature center. He now has 500 kids. And one thing a garden does in these urban areas, especially in urban areas that are blighted and don't have green space, it creates a place for people to go and meet. We see that in gardens everywhere, but in urban space, it's such an unusual space. It really brings people together, and there's great stories about Eden Place. Again, this is in your resources as well. Seed Your Future, who I'm assuming you all know about, because Charlie Hall, who's very involved with American Bloom, is very involved, and I think one of the founders of Seed Your Future. And they do a lot around kids and horticultural careers. And has American Bloom ever in their communities done job fairs around green careers? They have a intern finder for jobs and plants, and they have hundreds of different things related to gardening that kids can learn more about and find more about. And it's really interesting. I found it interesting to go on that. I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. I never thought of that. So thinking about American Bloom holding in some of the beautiful spaces you create, some sort of job fair, especially for kids who don't have the opportunity to meet and speak to different people in different professions. So a few pandemic ideas, and I know, forgive me, because a lot of you do a lot of different work like this, but collaborating and just having conversations with your PTAs, YMCAs, assisted housing. There's some amazing assisted housing gardening programs as well. drive-by pickups, creating a place for to do at-home plant activity kits. Talked a few about those with the carnations and the plant people, but in the winter you can grow microgreens, and now with social media, sharing that, videos. All of you are such amazing gardeners, and I know there's probably a lot of local celebrities who garden, local gardening writers, and create videos doing some of the activities you're handing out. You bring those kits to parents or the school and you say, here's the kit, watch the video. You've made a lot of moms really happy, and educators as well. Besides, of course, all of our ulterior motive to get more people in the garden. Story hours, Zoom story hours with book based on the garden. There's so many amazing books. You're probably familiar with Sharon Lovejoy, Sunflower Houses. I always tease her, she's the grandmother really of getting kids engaged in the garden. But if you did Zoom story hours with the mayor of your town or your head of American Bloom, all based about the garden. And again, in our resources, and Kids Gardening has a lot of lists of the best of, so does American Horde Society. And then how can you empower kids and families in the spring? I used to do a program called Random Acts of Gardening, where we went around and encouraged other communities across the country to give plants to your local fire stations, police stations, your local nonprofits, surprise families, with a container with America in Bloom vegetables and herbs, and have the kids report on them. There's just, as you know, 1,000,001 ways. And I hope this has helped just provide some ways to collaborate more to reach more kids. And now Emily's going to talk a little bit more about kids gardening.
Good afternoon, America in Bloom. Thanks for inviting Kids Gardening to present at the Symposium in the Sky. I hope you're having a wonderful fall day wherever you are. Hopefully you're getting some sunshine or perhaps some much needed rain. I'm Em Shipman. I'm Kids Gardening's Executive Director. I'm based in Vermont. I'm a mom, an avid gardener, an active community member. And I'm so thankful to be here today and to have an opportunity to share a little bit more about kids gardening and the importance of the work that we do to get more kids playing and learning in the garden. We envision generations of happier and healthier kids learning through the garden and connecting to nature. Gardening changes and improves kids' lives, their communities, and the planet. At Kids Gardening, our grant programs, contests, curriculum, and activities inspire and support parents, educators, and communities who bring these life-changing opportunities to kids. In 2019, we reached 1.4 million children across the United States, awarded $154,000 to 222 programs. We reached 69,000 kids with our curriculum publications, 745,000 kids with our lesson plans, 587 children were reached through the activities that we develop, and 83,000 kids were served directly through our grants and contests. As a national nonprofit, we inspire and support garden educators, volunteers, and families by offering grants, original educational resources, and inspiration to get more kids learning through the garden. Since 1982, we have been awarding garden grants to schools and youth garden programs across the country. Since 2006, we've been recording that data that you see here on the map. So since 2006, we've awarded 11,000 grantees across the country. Increasingly, Youth garden grants are disappearing, and Kids Gardening is one of the few organizations remaining that's offering grants to schools and youth gardening organizations for youth garden grants. Here's a quote from one of our grantees. Gardening with kids provides the sensory input that kids need for calm, happy bodies and mind. When they're digging in the soil and feeling the soil on their hands, they're feeling the breeze on their skin, they're hearing the birds around them, they're smelling the smells of the herbs and the plants that they're working with. This is very regulating for our bodies and our minds, and it's calming and organizing. Additionally, gardening with kids engages kids' innate sense of curiosity, wonder, and joy. We all know and appreciate that young children are inherently curious and asking why, and have a sense of wonder and joy that we want to keep alive as long as we can. Gardening with kids also builds skills of empathy by caring for other living things, and the skill of delayed gratification, planting a seed and waiting patiently and watching it grow. Gardening with kids fosters their feelings of connectedness to nature and the natural world around them, to food and where their food comes from, and to their bodies as they work in the garden. It also allows kids to learn through experience. Gardens are the ultimate laboratory, and this fosters a growth mindset and allows kids to learn through trial and error. And finally, all of these skills together set children up to enable them to be able to make healthy and informed choices. Since early March of 2019, Kids Gardening has seen a 20% increase month over month in our email subscribership and in our website traffic. These are folks who are coming to our site to download free lesson plans, activities, and curricula to get more kids learning through the garden. We are working hard at Kids Gardening to try to meet this increased demand, because we know that kids who garden are happier, healthier, and more connected to nature. And we know that people are under so much stress right now. And we think the garden has even more potential to provide respite, that kids will find the much needed connections through the garden. We're doing a couple of exciting things to try to meet this demand. One of those things is called Lessons to Grow By. Lessons to Grow By is a free 4-month program of weekly garden-themed lessons and activities for parents who are teaching at home or for educators instructing via distance learning. It's available by subscription only, so to receive it, you go to kidsgardening.org/lessons to grow by and sign up there to receive weekly emails with 3 activities based on a monthly theme. September's theme was pollinators and October's theme is plant parts. So I encourage you to go sign up now to get those weekly emails. Another exciting project happening at Kids Gardening is called the Kids Garden Network. The Kids Garden Network is being tested now and it's launching in early 2021. As we all move online and social distance, we know that educators and parents and those who are working with kids in the garden are hungry for connection as well. They're hungry for opportunities to learn from one another about what's working and what's not when it comes to teaching children through the garden. So we're bringing everyone together on an online community. It's a peer networking community that will equip the youth garden advocates nationwide with all of the skills, tools, and connections that they need in order to plan, pilot, and scale their youth garden programs. This is a collaborative effort that we're working together on with Food Corps, Big Green, Life Lab, Community Groundworks, the DC Aussie School Garden Program, Whole Kids Foundation, Franklin Park Conservatory, City Sprouts, American Horticultural Society, Shelburne Farms, Little Green Thumbs, National Farm to School Network, and Junior Master Gardener Program. It's a really wonderful group of folks, and we're proud to be able to launch this community that we think will be transformational in terms of getting more kids learning through the garden. I want to leave you with a message from the kids themselves saying, we love our garden. I know you love your garden too, and I hope that you will visit us at kidsgardening.org, sign up for Lessons to Grow By, download lesson plans, activities, and curricula, and consider donating to support our work during this critical time. Thanks so much for having me. Have a wonderful rest of your
Thank you, Emily. I just want to talk about, leave you with Emily's video and the power of plants to engage and connect us and improve the world we live in. And as you can see, so many kids, they start to learn about saving the plants, and we all think we're saving, the plants, that it's our job to save them. And I think when kids finally realize that it's the plants that are saving us, it's when they really become lifelong community citizens. And that's the beauty of what we all do. And we're here for any questions and discussion. Thank you.